Okay, let's dive right in. What truly distinguishes a living thing from, say, a rock or even a really complex machine?
Hmm.
Is it just chemistry, or is there something more fundamental happening?
Well, that's a huge question, isn't it?
Yeah. Think about it from a tiny cell sensing its environment, all the way up to you deciding what to do next.
Uh-huh.
There's this constant process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Taking in information, making a choice.
Exactly. And our sources suggest this isn't just, one function of life. It
Right.
might actually be what defines life itself, this whole concept of information processing and decision-making, IPDM.
IPDM, okay.
What's fascinating is how researchers are seeing this continuous cycle, getting information, processing it, storing it, using it to pick an action as this elemental organizing force.
The thing that separates living matter from non-living.
Pretty much, yeah. It underpins everything life does.
Absolutely. So for this deep dive, we've pulled together a whole stack of sources looking at IPDM as this, universal principle.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to unpack how it shows up across biology, human thinking, the systems we build, and, artificial intelligence too.
And our mission really is to guide you through this material, give you a clear view of IPDM. What is it?
Where do we see it?
Where is it? How does it work at different levels? And maybe most importantly, why does understanding it matter now, especially with AI in the picture?
We want to highlight those surprising connections, like from your own DNA to how whole societies make choices and how it shapes your world day to day.
Yeah.
So let's start with that idea. It's universality.
Okay. So if we think of IPDM as that core cycle, taking info, using it to choose actions, its fundamental nature becomes, pretty clear. It's this principle of purposeful, goal-directed activity that seems to separate life from just inanimate stuff.
Stuff that just follows predictable rules.
Exactly. That's a key distinction the sources make. Living systems actively process information for goals. Non-living systems just react based on physical laws.
Sounds like active choosing versus passive reacting.
Right. And researchers are even starting to talk about active information processing as a ubiquitous biosignature, something that just is life.
Wow. A signature of life itself.
And its scope is, truly universal. You see it working regardless of gender, age.
From the very beginning.
Yeah, from the basic cellular decisions in an embryo right through to how cognition changes as we age.
And across cultures, too.
Yeah.
Shaping norms, values.
Definitely. And it's been fundamental throughout history. Basic survival instincts, complex, modern societies, it's all built on IPDM.
That common phrase, all humans are different.
A big part of that is just the individual variation in our IPDM, our capabilities, our styles of thinking, the knowledge we gather.
Which comes from?
A mix, right,
Oh.
genes, definitely. But also how our environment tweaks those genes' epigenetics, plus everything we learn and experience.
Okay, this leads to a really provocative idea from one source.
I think I know the one.
If this goal-directed info processing is so unique to life, and we don't see it in the predictable, rule-following, inanimate world, could that suggest, an unnatural origin for life's IPDM?
It's a fascinating question raised in the material, yeah. It pushes you to think. If life's responsiveness is truly different from just chemistry.
Then what about AI, which we build from predictable processes?
Exactly. Can AI, built from what we consider natural processes, truly replicate that depth of goal-directed choice we see in life? It suggests maybe a difference in kind, not just complexity.
A fundamental gap, perhaps.
Potentially.
And this incredible capacity for IPDM, it's not abstract. It's built right into our biology. It starts right down at the molecular level.
Think about DNA. Our sources call it the primary information storage medium, like the ultimate hard drive.
Super stable, super dense.
Incredibly dense, digital, basically. The core instruction set. They estimate 1 gram could theoretically hold 215 million gigabytes.
That's staggering. And a single human cell.
Has about a gigabyte of this code packed inside.
But life isn't just static code, right? It adapts.
Right, and that's where epigenetics comes in. It's like a dynamic layer on top.
Not changing the DNA sequence itself.
No, but adding little chemical tags or modifications that control when and how genes get used, based on signals from the environment, nutrition, stress, other cells.
So it's like a real-time control system.
Exactly. An adaptive IPDM system right at the cellular level. The cell gets data, these chemical signals, and epigenetics helps it decide which parts of the code to activate.
Allowing it to adapt much faster than waiting for DNA mutations.
Precisely. It's a form of cellular memory. And sometimes that information can even be passed down generations, especially in non-mammals.
It's just mind-boggling how efficient a cell is. As an information processor, I mean.
Isn't it? compared to our best electronics. In terms of information density, energy use, it's phenomenal.
Even a simple bacterium like E. coli.
Yeah, a classic example. It has chemical sensors, basically a little patch on its surface.
To sense its environment.
Right. And that information influences how it moves its flagella. It makes decisions swim towards food, avoid toxins, basic survival driven by IPDM.
And inside our cells, it's even more complex, these vast networks.
Proteins, genes, pathways, constantly interacting, adapting function based on cues, managing energy, repair, reproduction.
All requiring sophisticated, continuous IPDM.
In that tiny space, it really hammers home that distinction. Non-living things follow rules. Living systems make choices based on information. The cell is the perfect example.
Okay, so scaling up from the cell to complex biological systems, we see these IPDM principles organized in really interesting ways. You mentioned cybernetics.
Right, Norbert Wiener's idea. Cybernetics is basically the study of control and communication in animals and machines. Biocybernetics just applies that lens to biology.
Looking at how systems regulate themselves using information.
Exactly. Homeostasis is a core concept there.
Keeping things stable.
Yeah, how systems dynamically adjust. Think blood sugar. Your body senses glucose levels, that's information. Then it uses hormones like insulin to make decisions, release more, release less, to bring levels back into balance. It's a feedback loop.
Based on information processing.
Totally. Or the human limbic system involved in emotion behavior.
Right.
It processes environmental info, learns from it, and manages actions tied to survival. Eating, responding to threats. It's this complex mix of unconscious and conscious control, all running on IPDM.
This is where it gets really interesting personally, I think. Nutrition.
Ah, yes.
Our sources emphasize it's not just fuel, it's a critical source of informational molecules.
That's a great way to put it. Molecules that directly affect our physiological, biological, and our cognitive IPDM.
It's not just food, right? Water quality, air quality too.
All part of the informational intake. Glucose, obviously, is vital brain energy. Powers attention, learning, memory.
Executive functions, making those decisions.
Right. And it's needed to synthesize neurotransmitters, the brain's chemical messengers.
But the info stream is much richer than just glucose.
Oh, absolutely. Diets high in fruits, vegetables, omega-3s, antioxidants, think Mediterranean, DASH diets.
They provide these bioactive compounds.
Yeah, things like polyphenols, vitamins, crucial for brain health, protecting against oxidative stress, inflammation, helping build neurotransmitters, improving blood flow.
And there's actual data linking these diets to better cognitive function.
Compelling data. Slower cognitive decline, reduced risk of neurodegenerative diseases. One source mentioned a specific finding, adding just 100 grams more fruits and veg a day was linked to something like a 13% lower risk of cognitive impairment in older adults. That's specific information intake influencing a major outcome.
Wow. And the flip side, poor nutrition.
Deficiencies or excesses like chronically high glucose and type 2 diabetes, they significantly impair IPDM, affect decision-making, mental health.
And these effects can even be intergenerational.
Potentially, yes, through epigenetics or early developmental impact.
So we should think of nutrition as this constant modulatory information stream.
That's a perfect description. Glucose isn't just fuel. It's level signals, resource availability, influencing motivation. Polyphenols can have quick effects improving brain oxygenation, executive function shortly after you eat them.
It really expands on you are what you eat.
It's more like you think and decide based on the information you feed your biology.
Which has huge implications. Public health, education, personal choices.
Big time. And it suggests that any truly comprehensive model of human cognition, maybe even for AI down the line, might need to factor in these dynamic physiological inputs.
Okay, so shifting from biology to the mind itself, human cognition is, an incredibly complex IPDM architecture.
Definitely. Take perception. It's not just passive data intake like a camera.
Right.
It's an active process. We merge sensory input with our existing knowledge, our memory as the context, to build meaningful, subjective understanding. Very different from just analyzing raw data points.
Human memory. It's not like a computer's hard drive either.
Not at all. It's incredibly rich, associative. We have short-term or working memory for immediate tasks, sure. But long-term memory, facts, experiences, skills, its power is how interconnected it is. It forms our personal narrative.
AI memory is vast, accurate, but it lacks that felt quality, that richness.
Exactly. It doesn't have that associative web, that contextual embedding that shapes our identity.
And learning. That's the dynamic part.
Yeah, learning is how we modify our IPDM pathways based on experience. Acquiring knowledge, refining skills, getting better at processing information, and making decisions over time.
Which brings us to decision-making itself, a cornerstone process.
Absolutely. Selecting actions from options based on, well, everything. Values, experience, circumstances, hopes.
And it's rarely just logical calculation.
Almost never purely logical. It's usually this dynamic balance between intuition, gut feeling, and rational analysis.
Though there are structured ways to approach it.
Sure, the sources mention steps. Clarify values, define the decision, gather info, weigh pros and cons, think long-term, useful frameworks.
But often we decide under uncertainty.
Most of the time. And while formal methods exist, Bayes' rule, things like that human judgment, experience, just navigating ambiguity, those remain indispensable.
And a huge factor influencing all of this is our subjective state, right? Our state of mind, our beliefs.
Powerful filters. Human IPDM is profoundly shaped by these. Emotions, regulated by the limbic system, bias our attention, influence how we remember things, how we evaluate options.
And our values act as a guide.
A crucial guiding framework, yes. And our belief systems, from everyday assumptions to deep faith, how we even think about truth, they form the lens through which we see everything.
How we interpret information, how we decide to act.
Exactly. Truth itself is central here. Pragmatic views mention link truth to what works, what helps us solve problems, what stands up to scrutiny. The pursuit of truth is a core human drive for IPDM.
And faith, how does that fit in?
Faith, understood as a trusting commitment to a person, a principle, maybe a deity, it plays a unique role too. It's cognitive belief, but also conative, a desire to act.
It helps us act when we don't have all the proof.
Precisely. It enables long-term goals, relationships, commitments, especially under uncertainty or with incomplete evidence. It involves risk, resilience, a potent, non-empirical driver.
So truth and faith, they're like higher level tools.
That's a good way to think about it. Metacognitive tools or frameworks. Basic IPDM handles the immediate data, but these help structure our thinking when things get complex, uncertain, unknowable. They help manage the limits of direct info processing.
Something current AI just doesn't have, these internal frameworks based on lived experience or commitment.
Right. Not in the same way, certainly.
Okay, moving beyond the individual mind. We humans create entire systems, cultures that seem like externalized collective IPDM.
Absolutely. We've developed formal languages and tools specifically for this. Mathematics, a fundamental tool for modeling reality, quantifying things, solving problems.
From basic arithmetic to advanced calculus.
It transforms complex issues into manageable models. Logic gives us the rules for valid reasoning, essential for critical thinking.
In computer science.
Born from math and logic, really. Gives us the practical means to automate IPDM, from the abacus to supercomputers and AI.
Statistics, too, dealing with data, uncertainty.
Crucial tools for collecting, analyzing, interpreting data, making decisions when you don't have all the facts, testing ideas.
But IPDM isn't just logic and numbers. What about the arts?
A powerful medium. Music, painting, theater, movies. They process and communicate incredibly complex information.
Especially emotion, meaning, things beyond literal language.
Exactly. Think about music. The artist makes countless IPDM choices: form, content, sound. The listener processes pitch, rhythm, harmony through different brain areas, interpreting it, finding meaning, feeling emotion. It's a sophisticated exchange of non-literal information.
And entire societies function as collective IPDM systems, too.
Definitely. Establishing structures, norms, processes for making shared decisions, coordinating action.
Religion, from a sociological view.
Acts as a meaning system. Transmits values, beliefs, moral codes. Shapes the worldview. The ethical IPDM of adherence can be an agent of social control, like codes of conduct.
Culture provides the context.
The shared language, customs, norms, the implicit rules for how we interpret information and make decisions within a group.
And politics is fundamentally about collective decision-making.
And resource allocation, power. It inherently relies on the flow, interpretation, and strategic use of information. Information management is politics in many ways.
So these structures, institutions, culture, religion, they're like emergent networks.
That's a useful systems view, yeah. Emergent IPDM networks arising from countless individual interactions. They develop ways to gather, filter, spread information, and force decisions.
And these systems can develop their own biases, like doctrines or ideologies.
And control mechanisms, laws, codes, propaganda to maintain coherence. Thinking this way helps understand things like misinformation or polarization at a systems level.
Economic activity seems like another massive IPDM system.
Driven entirely by processing information about scarcity, value, production, distribution,
And supply chains.
are the quintessential example. Complex, distributed IPDM networks managing the flow of goods and information from source to consumer.
Their efficiency relies completely on good information.
Accurate, timely info processing, demand, inventory, logistics, external factors. It's all information.
So disruptions, pandemics, natural disasters, conflicts.
Are often, at their core, failures or interruptions in those critical information flows, or failures in processing that information effectively within the network.
And fixing them requires better IPDM.
Sophisticated strategies, yeah. Proactive planning, reactive responses, all dependent on better sensing, analysis, decision-making, increasingly helped by AI and machine learning, of course.
Okay, let's pivot to that comparison now. Human IPDM versus artificial intelligence. The sources highlight some fundamental differences.
They really do. AI excels at speed, scale, precision processing, huge data sets, repetitive tasks. Humans are unmatched in, well, genuine creativity, emotional understanding, social nuance, handling ambiguity.
Complementary strengths, really.
You could say that. Think about perception. AI sensors might see more, but they lack our ability to integrate context, experience, emotion for that holistic felt understanding.
AI attention is focused, but maybe inflexible. Human attention is adaptable, but distractible.
Right. And memory. AI has perfect recall, huge capacity. Human memory is associative, contextual, emotional, forms our identity. But it's fallible.
AI retrieves data. Humans build meaning.
That's a nice way to put it. Language is another fascinating area. LLMs are amazing at syntax and semantics at scale.
But humans operate within deep context. Emotion, culture, pragmatics.
Understanding sarcasm, intent, unspoken meaning. AI still struggles fundamentally there. Human language has subjective depth.
Problem solving, too. AI rocks well-defined problems with algorithms.
Humans use insight, intuition, analogy for novel, fuzzy problems where rules aren't clear. Our reasoning involves navigating uncertainty beyond just probabilities.
I think a key difference mentioned is embodiment.
Crucial. Our cognition is shaped by having a physical body interacting with the world. It seems fundamental for developing a real causal understanding. AI is mostly disembodied abstract processing.
Our brain even offloads stuff to the body.
And the environment, yeah. The sources highlight other contrasts, too. Humans learn well from sparse data. AI usually needs tons. Genuine creativity versus pattern recombination, emotional intelligence, even energy efficiency. The brain is remarkably efficient compared to large AI models.
So when AI looks at human science, like nutrition or psychology,
its understanding is analytical, pattern-based. It can crunch massive amounts of literature, trial data, find complex correlations, anomalies humans might miss just due to volume.
it's like a mirror.
In a way, yeah. A powerful analytical mirror reflecting back the structure, the patterns, even the potential biases within our own scientific knowledge. It shows us the predictable patterns in the data we've generated about ourselves.
But it's still statistical understanding.
Right. It lacks the human scientist's intuitive leaps, serendipity, that subjective drive, passion, wonder. It finds patterns, but doesn't get why in a human sense without our interpretation.
Which brings us back to that snippet from the AI podcast by DigiView we discussed.
Yes, the map metaphor.
It captures it perfectly. AI gives the schematic view, maps the mechanisms, patterns, scale of meaning-making, deconstructs the architecture.
But as the snippet says, that very detachment highlights what's uniquely ours. The feeling, the lived subjective experience of meaning. The AI maps the territory, but it doesn't walk the path.
It understands about meaning, but doesn't have meaning.
That subjective dimension, human IPDM, especially around meaning, is tied to our lived experience, joy, loss, connection, awe. Current AI doesn't have that first-person perspective.
It points to a gap. AI handles structure, syntax, and reference semantics statistically, but human meaning is rooted in pragmatics, context, intent, purpose, effect in the world.
AI can describe the system of meaning, but it doesn't participate in the experience of it.
And just making AI bigger or feeding it more data might not bridge that gap.
It raises that question. Maybe it needs embodiment, social interaction, a developmental path, and it has real implications for trusting AI that understands words, but not the deeper subjective values behind them.
Speaking of implications, IPDM, especially now with AI, brings huge ethical considerations. The sources dive into this.
While human IPDM itself is fallible, right? biases, emotions, substances. That's why we have concepts like responsibility, accountability, morality, ethics. They're about guiding and judging the outcomes of human IPDM.
Laws and moral frameworks try to steer human IPDM.
Exactly. But with AI processing info and making decisions, we hit new ethical challenges. Bias is a huge one.
AI learning from biased data.
Yeah, and potentially amplifying societal biases in areas like hiring, loans, even justice. Fairness is critical.
Privacy is another big one.
AI often needs massive data sets, often personal. How is that data collected, used, protected, preventing misuse, surveillance?
Right.
It's a major ethical tightrope.
And the black box problem, transparency.
Right. Complex AI models can be opaque. We don't always know why they made a decision. That erodes trust, makes accountability really tricky when things go wrong. Who's responsible?
And as AI gets more autonomous,
Concerns about human control escalate. Autonomous vehicles, weapons, critical infrastructure. Ensuring AI aligns with human values and intentions, keeping meaningful human oversight, that's vital.
plus other things, job displacement, malicious use like deepfakes or propaganda.
Equitable access, environmental impact. The list is long.
The sources also brought up this concept, the algorithmic panopticon.
Yeah, based on the prison design idea. Pervasive surveillance.
But with AI collecting and analyzing data on everything we do and, say, our IPDM outputs,
creating this modern equivalent. The worry is that the mere awareness or suspicion of being constantly monitored and judged by opaque algorithms could have a chilling effect.
making people hesitant.
Hesitant to explore unusual ideas, express dissent, take risks, deviate from perceived norms, fearing algorithmic consequences you don't even understand.
So understanding human IPDM via AI could paradoxically lead to less diverse human thought.
That's a risk discussed. A potential homogenization, stifling creativity and critical thinking. It raises deep questions about autonomy and freedom of thought in an AI-saturated world.
So how do we navigate all this? The path forward seems to involve both improving our own IPDM and using AI responsibly.
Exactly. Enhancing human IPDM starts with things like education, cultivating critical thinking, logic, teaching how to analyze information, spot assumptions, evaluate evidence. Media literacy is non-negotiable now.
And supporting our biology, the nutrition and lifestyle factors we talked about.
Absolutely vital. Nutrient-dense foods, omega-3s, managing stress, sleep. They directly support the machinery of thought and decision-making.
We also need to be aware of our own biases.
And actively work against them. Seek diverse perspectives, challenge assumptions, maybe use structured thinking tools sometimes.
Promoting mental well-being and emotional intelligence seems key, too.
Helps manage things that impair IPDM and allows for more balanced, insightful decisions.
And with AI, the goal should be augmentation.
Augmented intelligence, yeah. Viewing AI as a collaborator, enhancing human capabilities, not just replacing them, finding that synergy.
AI handles the scale, speed, pattern finding.
Provides data-driven insights, automates the routine stuff. Humans bring the context, the ethics, the creativity, the empathy. Make the final nuanced calls.
We see this already in healthcare, finance.
Supply chains, personalized education, scientific research. AI helps analyze, humans interpret and decide. It frees up our cognitive resources for uniquely human skills.
But this requires a serious commitment to ethical AI development.
Absolutely. Guidelines, frameworks, best practices, ongoing dialogue. We need to ensure AI benefits humanity, upholds rights, minimizes harm.
Key pillars being fairness, transparency, accountability,
Privacy protection, meaningful human control, safety, security, and crucially, alignment with human values. That's a tough one, embedding values.
and finally, mitigating the negative impacts when IPDM does fail, whether human systems or AI.
Requires building resilience, better info flow, redundancy, agile responses in systems like supply chains. For society, it means enhancing trust through transparency and accountability in our institutions.
And overseeing complex AI is its own challenge.
A huge one. It's like a meta-level IPDM task. We need sophisticated ways to monitor AI, interpret its outputs. Explainability is key here. Evaluate it against ethics and safety, decide on constraints, learn from failures.
And that can't be fully automated.
No way. It requires human wisdom, ethical judgment, collaboration, societal consensus. Developing these robust meta-IPDM frameworks, oversight, regulation, auditing is critical.
So we've gone from the cell to the mind to society to AI. IPDM really does seem to be this fundamental thread running through everything.
A universal imperative, as you said at the start, underlying life and all its creations.
And the future seems to be this intricate dance between human and artificial intelligence.
A complex symbiosis. AI brings the power, the scale. Humans bring, hopefully, the wisdom, the ethics, the lived experience, the subjective understanding.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening, circling back to that AI mapping the territory, but humans walking the path. Considering this whole deep dive, how information shapes decisions everywhere, from your own biology up to global systems and AI, how does really understanding this fundamental process change how you perceive the world around you? And maybe how does it change the choices you make each day?
This is DigitView.